When did ancient humans start smoking? Humans were smoking something before we even invented the wheel, before writing, before most of the animals we domesticated. I need you to sit with that for a second. Cavemen had a habit before they had a calendar, and it's weirder, older, and messier than anything you learned in school. And no, I'm not talking about a campfire. I'm talking about ancient humans intentionally getting a plant, doing something to it, and inhaling it on purpose. This isn't a modern habit with an old wrapper. It might be one of the oldest continuous human behaviors on record. Let's start at the actual beginning. Quick thing before we dive in. If this is your first time here, we cover ancient history like this every week. Weird facts, real sources, zero boring lecture energy. Hit follow now so you don't miss the next one. So here's where the story actually starts. Not Egypt, not Rome, not anywhere you'd expect. Utah. In the middle of a desert called the Great Salt Lake Desert, archaeologists found a tiny ancient fireplace used by hunter-gatherers. Inside it, 4 burnt tobacco seeds, carbon dated to over 12,300 years ago. That is not a typo. That's thousands of years before farming existed anywhere on Earth. These people hadn't figured out agriculture yet, but they had absolutely figured out tobacco. And get this, the tobacco they found wasn't even growing nearby. Researchers think these people hiked over 8 miles just to go get it. That's commitment. Nobody's walking 8 miles round trip for something they don't actually want. And that's just the earliest known use. Give it a few thousand years, and ancient humans don't just use this plant, they build entire religions around it. Fast forward a few thousand years, and tobacco isn't just something people casually smoke by a fire anymore. The ancient Maya turn it into a full-blown sacred ritual. We're talking temple carvings at a site called Palenque that literally show priests smoking early cigarette-style rolls, wrapped in bark and leaves. This wasn't recreational. This was religious. Priests would burn tobacco as an offering to the gods and blow the smoke out as part of the ceremony. The smoke itself was considered a message going up to the divine. And by this point, people aren't just finding wild tobacco anymore either. They're actively growing it. By around 8,000 years ago, groups across the Americas had moved from "let's go find some" to full-on deliberate cultivation, breeding it alongside their food crops. Tobacco had officially leveled up from thing we forage to thing we farm. Now, tobacco is only half of this story. Because on the complete opposite side of the planet, a totally different group of ancient people were doing something even more intense. Let's go to a mountain graveyard in western China. Around 2,500 years ago, high up in the Pamir Mountains, there's a burial ground called Jirzhankal Cemetery. Archaeologists dig up these small wooden braziers, basically little burner bowls, from inside the tombs. They test the residue inside using chemical analysis. Turns out, cannabis. And not weak cannabis either. This stuff had unusually high THC levels, way more potent than what naturally grows wild. Which means someone 2,500 years ago was already actively selecting for the strongest plants. Ancient humans were basically running their own breeding program. And this wasn't a party. This was a funeral. Researchers think mourners burned this cannabis specifically to reach an altered state of mind during the ceremony, to help them feel closer to whoever they'd lost or to the spirit world. Add in music, ritual, the smoke. This was a full sensory funeral experience designed to shift consciousness, not just mourn quietly. And here's the twist that makes this even wilder. Bone analysis showed a third of the people buried at this site weren't even local. They'd traveled in from all over. This cemetery sat right on ancient trade routes, basically the Silk Road before the Silk Road had a name. So this wasn't some isolated local habit. This was already a shared cultural practice moving across huge distances, thousands of years ago. So now you've got tobacco on one side of the world and cannabis on the other, both already deeply embedded in ritual and daily life thousands of years ago. But here's the part that actually connects both stories. Here's the actual pattern hiding underneath both of these stories. Humans, completely independently on opposite sides of the planet, with zero contact with each other, both figured out how to identify a psychoactive plant, process it, and build entire cultural or religious systems around inhaling its smoke. Nobody taught them this. Nobody passed down a manual. Two totally separate groups of ancient humans landed on the same basic idea because apparently it's just a deeply human thing to do. One researcher who worked on the tobacco discovery put it in a way that stuck with me. He basically said, think of it like your morning coffee. People have always sought out plants that shift how they feel. That's not a modern habit. That might just be a fundamental part of how humans have always operated. And by the time you get to the ancient Maya smoking tobacco in temple ceremonies, and later, tobacco making its way to Europe through colonial trade routes, and cannabis spreading along Silk Road trade paths, you're looking at one continuous tangled thread that runs from a Utah fire pit 12,000 years ago all the way to something sitting in a store today. Same basic human impulse, just wearing different outfits across different centuries. So, next time someone acts like this is some uniquely modern thing, it's not. It's one of the oldest, most consistent threads in human history, showing up independently across completely different civilizations, thousands of miles and thousands of years apart. Ancient humans were curious, resourceful, and clearly willing to hike 8 miles for something they cared about. Some things really don't change. If this is the kind of ancient history nobody taught you in school, follow. We drop videos like this every single week. Comment which ancient habit or ritual you want investigated next, because, trust me, this was not the weirdest thing ancient humans normalized. And if you want more of the ancient people were absolutely unhinged energy, check out the Cleopatra video linked right here. It's a completely different kind of chaos.